Good morning, everybody. It's currently 4:50 AM. I've just woken up and I thought I would treat you all to a very special video today, something I've been looking forward to for a very, very long time. And if you do enjoy more content like this in the future, of course, please let me know, and I will make arrangements to provide you with more hard-cutting entertainment content. Today I have, as I said, something very, very special for you all. This is the first of my many reviews, which I hope to do. Now, I've not actually done a review of, well, anything before, but I'm hoping with your support together we can make this happen for the channel, of course, if you are interested in that. So today, without further ado, let me introduce the item of choice. We're going to be reviewing this particular piece here, something I'm overjoyed to finally own for my collection. Let me just very delicately balance it there. There we are. So I was trying to avoid touching too much of the box to not depreciate the collector's value there. This is a Star Wars Black Series from the Phantom Menace line, of course, Jar Jar Binks figure. I will not be unboxing it. Please do not ask me to unbox this. I do not want to damage the collector's value. This is specifically the Phantom Menace 01, TPM 01 for the figure reference. I believe the actual code of this figure is 02971. Now, this is from the Phase 4 Galaxy collection, and this is a deluxe 6-inch figure released in March 2021, and the average retail price for this particular figure is £30. Now, I want to go through and review this particular figure. I want to talk about not only it from the perspective of being a collector's piece, honestly, a modern-day artwork masterpiece, perhaps. And I also want to discuss it from the perspective of a fan of Star Wars, maybe some inaccuracies with this particular figure, which, oh, my friends, there are more than one, but I don't want to spoil that part of the review too much. And then at the end, I will, of course, give a final score for the Star Wars The Black Series Jar Jar Binks figure. Now, many of you are probably wondering, what is the Star Wars Black Series? Now, this is a line of premium collectibles. They are not toys. I need to emphasize that immediately here. These are not children's toys. This is artwork, and these are collectible figures for adults. They were first released in August 2013, and there are varying 6-inch figure ranges from Star Wars The Black Series. You have the regular versions and then deluxe versions. This in particular is a deluxe version. You can also get dioramas and things like 3 and 3/4 inch figures. Some of you may be familiar actually with the Force Effects lightsabers by Master Replicas, the very high quality Star Wars lightsaber recreations. Those all come under the banner of Star Wars Black Series. It is essentially the premium figure series, whereas with most cinematic releases, particularly Disney, you will get a whole line of what are children's toys. This is not one of those. Now, I'm going to go over some of the points of the figure. To not depreciate the value, I do actually have a pointing tool here, so that I can kind of adequately show you what is involved with this figure without damaging it. And again, we will not be unboxing it. So unfortunately, though I cannot show off the points of articulation, I made some notes based on my observations and my time spent with this figure. So, first thing to point out then, there are 17 total points of articulation. One thing that's very common with the Star Wars Black Series is not only are they very high quality in terms of paint application modeling, which we will talk more about in a second, but they are also fully posable. There are many people who enjoy creating, as I said, dioramas, which you can supplement with official diorama stands and models, but there are people who very much enjoy producing directed scenes. They can bring the world of Star Wars to life in their bedroom. Now, to reiterate, these aren't toys. These are very high-quality things, and as I said, the RRP for these can run upwards of £30, in fact. So, the 17 total points of articulation, well, there are 2 in the head, which are going to be, again, fairly difficult to see, but both an angle upwards and the pivot point on the neck there as well. In the mid-torso, we have a point of articulation there. There are 3 in both arms, so that is a wrist flexor. We have the elbow joint there and the the shoulder ball socket as well. We then have 4 in the legs, so there will be 1 on the ankle hidden down below the Star Wars Phantom Menace branding there. There is the knee joint, the hip joint, and then also a rotator on the ankle too for essentially 360 degrees of motion, though I would not recommend that. That's not particularly medically sound. Now, this particular figure also comes with some accessories too. I'm not going to discuss the accuracy of these accessories quite yet, but we will be going into that in a second. We have over here a Gungan Spear, and I will discuss more on the naming nomenclature very soon. It's a hotly debated topic. We have a Gungan Atlatl with a Booma, or an energy ball if you would prefer the basic term. And then we also have a personal defense shield of the Gungan variety there. Now, it's worth noting about this figure that it can fully hold and articulate with all of these accessories, something that is rarer in the cheaper children's toy variety of the Star Wars figures. But this is fully posable, and it can stand and hold with all of these accessories in any particular configuration. If you would prefer a weapon in one hand and a shield in the other, that's fine. Vice versa is also acceptable. Or weapons in both hands. Anything you can imagine. It's a fully posable figure. Now, before I break down the accuracies of the lore behind this particular character, I'm going to very carefully, and this does bring me, I have washed and sanitized my hands. I've also applied a wax coating to them so that they will not damage the box with my natural skin oils, because I would hate to see this piece at all sullied. So we'll take a look at the back of the box, but I do want to bring it in for a close-up so that you can more adequately see what I can only describe as a Picasso level of detailing in the paint. Particularly, one thing that caught my eye was on the back of the hands, and I apologize for the glare, but like I said, I'm not going to be taking this out of the box to depreciate the collector's value. On the back of the hands, you can see some very distinct detailing in the freckle work, both particularly on the underside and the top side of the arms there. The actual modeling is fantastic. The clothes, I will admit, are somewhat of a weak point. There are actually 3 layers to the clothing. He has this kind of outer layer of the brown fabric. On the top part of the torso, there is another layer. If I just kind of angle this here, you should be able to see it, of a kind of black material. And then finally you have the base figure molding, which, as you can see, runs from the shoulder joint here. Let me just get my pointing tool. From the shoulder joint here, all the way down through to the feet. Now, unfortunately, we can't see the feet, so I very much angle it. No, unfortunately, it's too much of a sharp decrease there to be able to see that. But overall, the actual paint application is fantastic, and the modeling, particularly on the face, is exceptionally accurate to Jar Jar Binks. I'm actually very, very impressed by the quality and the efficacy of this particular model. If we move on to the back of the box, now one thing that I was very disappointed to see is that there isn't any description about the accessories, nor particularly with regards to Jar Jar Binks himself. So, the description on the back reads, a clumsy, well-meaning Gungan outcast on Naboo, Jar Jar Binks has struggled to prove his worth throughout his life. Gungan maladroit. Mais bien, I'm not going to read I'm not going to read the French. Then you have, of course, the usual explanations, warnings, and you have to be above the age of 3 to own this. But as we've discussed, this is not a children's toy. This is in fact a collector's model, and as I said, it is the first of the Phantom Menace series line, again released in March 2021. There are no hints or any sort of clues to the amount of figures that will be included in this particular wave of Phantom Menace figures, nor is there any hint or even silhouette of the future release. The bottom of the box is, again, more warning labels, barcode, and then the side of the box has this incredibly well-rendered image of Jar Jar Binks that is produced specifically for this product, which I am very impressed that they've gone to that level of respect for the character and, of course, branding efficacy. Let's go ahead and stand that back up very carefully. There we are, front and center. So then, let's talk about something I'm more of an expert in. Now, I'm not an expert in action figures, unfortunately, but I can, however, give you an expert opinion on the lore accuracies and the consistencies, or perhaps even inconsistencies, unfortunately to say, with this particular figure. Now, as I said, the first thing to really discuss is the accessories. So this was the thing that caught my eye. Now, there are 3 accessories in total, and I'll again go over the names of them here. We'll break them down one by one. So we will start over here with this particular accessory, the Spearstaff. Now there is this is a hotly debated topic, in fact, in the Star Wars fan community. The correct name of the Gungan Spear has been hotly debated. So this has been referred to, and I believe is still the official name, and one I will be personally using in the particular concept for this figure, the Gungun Cesta. Now, this was originally referenced in the Star Wars Visual Dictionary, released, I believe it was May 26, 1999, as a companion piece to the Phantom Menace. It refers to both spears and the cupped weapons that the Gungan use as Atlatl, which is not correct. I am personally going to, again, use the term Cesta for this, which is, I believe, what they use on Wikipedia, but I haven't actually double-checked that one. I apologize. I'm very unprepared for this. The StarWars.com encyclopedia, however, refers to it as simply a Gungan Spear. It has a couple of times been referred to as a javelin, but it is a spear that you can throw, so that would make some sense. So a little bit of a hotly debated topic there, and that's why I'm actually somewhat disappointed to not see any sort of official recognition from Hasbro or Star Wars or the Disney Corporation to clear up this utter mess and confusion about the correct name for the Gungan Spear. It's something that's been very divisive for the Star Wars community for a long time, and I feel like this could have been a very significant healing moment for the community that was perhaps a more cynical person would say intentionally ignored to drive discussion and perhaps even act as a Streisand effect marketing technique for this particular Star Wars Black Series figure. I will leave that one up to you, viewers. I'm not here to pass judgment on the market manipulation that could be perhaps taking place here, but I would have loved to seen an end to this debate, the hatchet being buried with regards to the correct naming nomenclature for this particular Gungan weapon. He also comes with the correctly named now Atlatl, which is this item here, this cupped device. And again, there is a longer variant of a spear with a cupped end. This one does not have that, which can also be referred to as an Atlatl. An Atlatl is, of course, not a Gungan word, but is in fact comes from a Nawa language. Unfortunately, I'm not particularly au fait with that one, so I cannot tell you specifically. But Atlatl, of course, at least in its modern English usage that we've borrowed from, is a device to aid in throwing in what in real life I believe was spears. In this case, it is, of course, the Gungan Booma, as they refer to it in the Gungan parlance. This item here, the Energy Ball, first produced by the Otto Gunga Defense League. You might remember, actually, if you don't particularly remember these accessories or their appearance in the movies, you might actually remember the Battle of Naboo, which featured them being used with Falumpasets and Fambas and Leras, the domesticated bioweapons, perhaps if you'd like to use the term, used by the Gungan to fight the Trade Federation and the droid armies which were invading. Larger variants of the Boomas were used to repel them from catapults, and were, of course, in that very comical scene, were manually released by Jar Jar from the back of a Falumpa which was pulling a cart of them. There were handheld usage of boomers in the movie, so this is actually very accurate. There is a large point I'd like to make with all the accessories as a whole, but we will leave that for after I've reviewed, of course, the personal energy shield here. This is actually the item that is, I would argue, the most accurate to the film representation, and is not only exceptionally well modelled, as I've discussed before, but is entirely accurate. It has the gold frame of the Gungan energy shield with the four quadrants, and then the central quadrant there as well. So it's not really a central quadrant, is it? But the four outside quadrants, and then the central vertical line there of the energy shield. There's not much to say about this one. It is, of course, just a personal handheld energy shield used by the Gungan army. Now, there is, of course, a lore inconsistency with all of them, not to mention the naming of the Spearstaff weapon over to the left-hand side there. The big issue is that Jar Jar actually did not use any of these in the movie, with the exception of the Atlatl and the Booma there, the energy ball. The spears and the shields were used by the front line of the Gungan army. I believe Jar Jar was actually never depicted with either the energy shield or the spear, which is a slight inconsistency, but I understand why they've included this particular figure with these accessories, but we'll talk more about the meta towards the end when I would, prefer to give my rating. So then, the figure as a whole, this particular depiction of Jar Jar is, of course, the Battle of Naboo Jar Jar Binks, which was year 32, BYY, if I remember, before the Battle of Yavin. Now, one of the biggest lore inconsistencies here is actually something that's somewhat harder to notice, and you might not actually realize this if you are considering it at a cursory glance. With the information I've just given you, the fact that this does take place in the Battle of Naboo, and the year is, of course, 32 BYY wartime, it is worth mentioning that they actually have incorrectly called the character simply Jar Jar Binks. Now, I've compared this to other characters in the Star Wars Black Series line. More specifically, let's take a character such as Count Dooku, for example, who is referred to on the box as Count Dooku. Jar Jar does not have his correct title and styling. They've referred to him quite simply on the bottom of the box here as Jar Jar Binks. Down the promotional art of the side there, this lovely rendered promotional art, it also does say Jar Jar Binks, which isn't correct, of course, because if this did take place during the Battle of Naboo, which we have to assume from the accessories, the fact that it's also, of course, Star Wars Phantom Menace, his correct title should in fact be Bombad General Jar Jar Binks, to include that honorific and military title. So the fact that they've intentionally left that off, I believe, is again perhaps harkening back to the manipulative marketing technique that we have just discussed. Now, overall, it's an incredible, I would say, interpretation. It's probably the best interpretation of a Gungan we're ever going to get in figure form here. Now, Jar Jar is, of course, an Atala Gungan with the longer ears versus, say, someone like Boss Nass, Rugal Nass, who is an Ankura Gungan, which is they're kind of variant species of the Gungan people. Now, the reason I mention this is because, of course, the Otala Gungans have these much larger ears towards the back, and quite commonly with any sort of figure, the hair molding is one of the most challenging parts. So when you've got a creature that's inherent biology is these large, long, flowing ears. Of course, very incredibly depicted with the prosthetics and of course the CGI moving into the later movies, played of course by Ahmed Best. It's a difficult thing to actually capture, similar to, say, the Aleku with Twi'lek or Togruta characters. It's kind of hard to capture, but I think they've done an incredible job. It is very difficult to again see without removing it from the box, which we won't be doing. But there is actually very distinct molding and even wrinkling on the ears themselves, which, again, I do believe this is currently the best depiction of a Gungan we are going to get for an action figure. Must have been around the year 1999, I actually bought a Jar Jar Binks action figure following the release of the movie. Immediately afterwards, visited a Woolworths, a now defunct store, and I remember that the Jar Jar I bought then, it was a much smaller scale figure. It's probably the 3 3/4 inch scale. Was incredibly lacking. I did actually try and find it, but unfortunately it could be honestly anywhere, lost over the past 22 years. It has, by comparison, I would have loved to have got that side-by-side shot. This is, I think, the definitive, I will go as far to use that word, the definitive depiction of a Gungan in figure form, which earns a lot of points for me as a particular Star Wars lore buff. I think this is incredible for archival purposes, but more importantly is an incredible depiction. And I'm very happy to see, again, from this kind of meta lore perspective, a re-release of these Star Wars Phantom Menace figures, at which point, as I said, it's been 21 years. It's very difficult to get these, whereas there have been many releases for the more iconic figures. Luke Skywalker, for example, gets many re-releases since the original movie release. Jar Jar is one of those figures that is more forgotten, and again, with the difficulties, as I talked about, with modelling the Atala Gungans, it's a nice treat to have as a Star Wars connoisseur, I think is, of course, the correct word here. As for my overall rating of the figure, now, as I discussed before, there is certainly the meta aspect of marketing with this figure, but from a lore perspective, by leaving the open interpretation of the accessory naming, by not being definitive about that, they're definitely causing up a storm, which I believe will contribute to significant sales of this figure, simply because it's going to be fresh in the general public's mind. Now, I believe the inclusion of the accessories, again from the meta perspective, was to boost sales for the figure. It is very difficult to justify, I would say, for anybody. I mean, obviously, for a Star Wars fan such as myself, it is not even remotely a question of justifying it. This was an immediate purchase for me, but for someone with perhaps more of an incidental interest in Star Wars, it's a much harder sale. £30 for a premium Jar Jar Binks figure. So I believe they included the accessories, not because, as I said, Jar Jar has used them in the movies, because he actually has not, with the exception of the Atlatl and the Booma. I believe the inclusion of them makes it a more complete piece. You are not just getting, and this is why I have to perhaps increase my rating beyond what some people might expect, you are not just getting a premium Jar Jar Binks figure. What you're getting is the total Gungan experience, and I will go as far to call it an experience here, because that's exactly, this figure, when I look upon it, does genuinely give me goosebumps. The fact that they have so accurately rendered a beloved children's character. And of course there is I won't get into this hotly debated subject because we could be here for a very long time. There is of course a lot of debate about Jar Jar Binks and his existence in the movies and his reception. But this was a beloved children's figure as someone who grew up with the release of this movie. Of course, I didn't think anything to the inclusion of Jar Jar as a character. So this for me is incredible to see. It would have been a real shame if they'd have not actually gone with a re-release. Perhaps this is a limited line of Phantom Menace characters. We might be looking at a perhaps Sebulba re-release, maybe an Arc Bumpy Roos for a slight expanded universe edition there. But the fact that we have got I dare I even say disliked character as the first in the series definitely deserves extra kudos there. Definitely deserves extra points. And the fact that they've included the accessories, although is not lore accurate, is a welcome addition, and something we would not ever be able to get, I would argue, outside of a Jar Jar character. For my overall rating then, as I said, the modelling, the application, the paint job from the figure itself, the points of articulation, it's incredible. It is, as you would expect, a true Star Wars Black Series premium character from the, again, Phase 4 Galaxy Collection. This is what you would expect. That should not, however, diminish it. Just because it is what you expect, you shouldn't give it a mediocre rank for that, because it is better than the average figure. And I think for the price point, which I will be factoring in here, it's an incredible purchase. It's an incredible sale, and I am thoroughly overjoyed to have it in my collection. The lore inconsistencies are where I will have to, of course, dock a few points, but I will be giving those points back because of the marketing necessities that we find ourselves in, beyond the collector sphere, but for the kind of general Star Wars consumer who, again, might not be interested in Jar Jar Binks. Overall, I would like to rate this figure out of 10 for the accurate paint, modelling, accessory inclusion outside of the scope of the character, the presentation, the box usage. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10 for the Jar Jar Binks Black Series figure. What would have earned it those few extra points? I would have perhaps liked some sort of description for the items included, the accessories included with the figure, a little simple sentence on the back, rather than perhaps say the French language. You could have omitted that entire thing and instead put in the accessory names and really cleared up that particularly hotly debated point. I would have preferred a longer description of Jar Jar, and more specifically, I would have also preferred his actual correct title of Bombad General Jar Jar Binks. I feel like anybody who has who is depicted in movies as having some sort of military service deserve their adequate title. And again, to bring it in line with the styling and the pathos used in the other Star Wars Black Series figures, that is definitely an oversight, which I'm hoping, well, dare I even say, if there is a re-release of this figure, perhaps one day, we could get an amended, errated version of that particular name. Hopefully I've presented some valid points there, and hopefully you two are now considering the purchase of a Star Wars Black Series Phantom Menace Jar Jar Binks figure number 02971 for £30 RRP, or of course your regional equivalent. And I will be keeping a very, very close eye on this particular figure series. Who knows, we might be treated to some other characters from the Phantom Menace who are perhaps long overdue. I think it's fair to say with this, long overdue a re-release. So let's see where it leads us. Please let me know your rating. I'll be very interested to read through your comments and your opinions on the figure itself. And I hope you've enjoyed watching. And if you would like to see more in the future, please let me know.